For a narcissist, relationships are never about connection, they are about reflection. The people around them exist to validate, admire, and stabilize their fragile sense of self. When they betray the wrong person, they not only lose a connection but also the unique role that person played in their life. Initially, this loss may not seem threatening. They may believe that the person will eventually return, that control can be re-established, or that the emotional impact is temporary. But what they fail to realize is that the healing of the wrong person is a force far more dangerous to them than anger, revenge, or confrontation. Every sign of growth becomes a trigger, a mirror reflecting the narcissist's loss in ways they cannot deny. Healing changes everything. The wrong person does not seek to provoke the narcissist. They do not chase revenge or validation. They simply move forward in a quiet, measured way. This is what makes it so destabilizing. When the narcissist sees the betrayed person smiling, achieving, or existing without turmoil, it is like holding up a mirror to the truth they cannot manipulate. That mirror shows not only the strength of the other person, but also the magnitude of the narcissist's failure. Every step forward is a subtle but relentless reminder that the person they sought to dominate is no longer under their influence. Peace for the wrong person is perhaps the most agonizing trigger. The narcissist expects chaos, dependency, or emotional collapse after betrayal. When it does not come, they experience dissonance. They anticipate reactions, manipulation, or emotional turbulence, but instead encounter calm. This silence is more powerful than confrontation because it offers no avenue for control. The narcissist wants a narrative, a story they can rewrite, a moment they can dominate. Instead, they are confronted with self-sufficiency, emotional clarity, and resilience. Every serene moment is a reflection of something they can never return to, a life they cannot reclaim, and a control they cannot regain. Success acts similarly. Every achievement of the wrong person highlights not only their growth, but also the narcissist's stagnation. Where the narcissist measures themselves against external validation, the wrong person's accomplishments are independent and authentic. They do not need to be seen, admired, or reflected upon to exist. This independence is a profound threat. It shows the narcissist that the power they thought they had was never real. It emphasizes the reality that influence is not guaranteed, and that some people cannot be bent or broken, no matter how skilled the narcissist thinks they are at manipulation. Even silence becomes a trigger. The wrong person does not need to respond to messages, inquiries, or attempts at re-engagement. Their lack of reaction is an assertion of independence. For the narcissist, this is unbearable. Control thrives on feedback, acknowledgement, and engagement. Silence denies them all of it. The narcissist cannot provoke, manipulate, or influence. They are left with only observation, and observation reminds them of their loss again and again. The quiet absence of emotional reaction is a constant, living testimony to the failure of their betrayal. This constant mirroring creates internal conflict. The narcissist cannot simply ignore the wrong person's growth, because their identity is intertwined with perception. Each sign of independence challenges the narrative they have been telling themselves, that they are superior, in control, and unmatched. They begin to obsessively compare, recalibrate strategies, and question how things went wrong. The narcissist may replay past interactions repeatedly, analyzing every word, gesture, and decision, searching for some way to regain influence or rewrite history. This obsession is exhausting, relentless, and ultimately unresolvable. It is not fueled by love, longing, or regret. It is fueled by the acute awareness that they cannot change what has happened and cannot reclaim the control they once enjoyed. Over time, the narcissist may escalate behaviors in attempts to reassert dominance. They might reach out subtly, flaunt accomplishments, or even attempt to provoke jealousy or anger. But each attempt is met with the wrong person's continued growth and stability, which nullifies the effort. The more the narcissist pushes, the clearer it becomes that control has permanently shifted. Unlike in previous relationships, Where manipulation could elicit submission, the wrong person now exists outside their influence. Their healing acts as a protective barrier, a mirror reflecting resilience and autonomy that the narcissist cannot penetrate. This dynamic is compounded by the narcissist's reliance on external validation. They do not have an internal compass strong enough to navigate relationships without reflection. The wrong person's healing strips them of that external source of feedback, forcing the narcissist to confront an uncomfortable truth: their identity, once maintained through control, is incomplete, hollow, and dependent on a connection that no longer exists. Unlike anger or betrayal, healing cannot be argued with, bargained over, or coerced. It is a silent, constant, and undeniable testament to the narcissist's failure. Ultimately, the wrong person's growth is permanent because it cannot be undone. Healing is self-sustaining. It does not rely on the narcissist's presence or validation. Every step forward, every moment of calm, every achievement becomes a trigger that reinforces the reality that the past cannot be rewritten. The narcissist experiences this as a persistent, low-grade pain, an awareness of loss they cannot control or influence, combined with the knowledge that their actions failed to have the intended effect. This triggers obsession, comparison, and sometimes desperation, but it never reverses the power of the wrong person's healing. In the end, the wrong person's healing serves as the ultimate mirror. It forces the narcissist to confront the consequences of their betrayal in ways that cannot be distorted, silenced, or escaped. Peace, success, and independence become the tools through which the narcissist's failure is continually reflected back to them. Each sign of growth is a reminder that control is no longer theirs, that dominance cannot be forced, and that some people cannot be broken, no matter how skilled the narcissist believes themselves to be. The healing of the wrong person becomes a permanent psychological trigger, shaping every thought, reaction, and memory the narcissist carries long after the betrayal itself has ended. It is a reminder, silent and unyielding, that some losses are irreversible, and that no amount of manipulation, charm, or strategy can reclaim what was never theirs to control. The most unsettling consequence of betraying the wrong person is not confrontation, exposure, or punishment. It is silence. The wrong person does not chase, argue, or demand explanations. They simply see clearly and leave. For the narcissist, this is deeply disturbing. They are used to controlling narratives, reshaping events, and rewriting reality to protect their image. But the wrong person becomes a silent witness, someone who knows exactly who they are behind the mask and chose not to fight, not to explain, not to seek justice. That quiet knowing cannot be erased. What makes this unbearable is not the loss of the relationship, but the loss of influence. The narcissist can provoke anger, guilt, or obsession, but they cannot provoke indifference that comes from clarity. The wrong person does not need answers, because they already understand. They do not need closure because the truth has settled inside them. And that calm withdrawal creates a psychological pressure the narcissist cannot escape. There is no argument to win, no story to correct, no reaction to feed on. After betrayal, the narcissist carries the awareness that someone out there sees the full picture and is no longer participating in the illusion. That awareness follows them quietly. In moments of success, it lingers. In moments of failure, it sharpens. They may imagine what that person thinks of them now, whether they feel exposed, diminished, or irrelevant. The silence becomes a mirror that reflects truth rather than admiration. This is why the lack of revenge is so powerful. Revenge would confirm importance. Begging would restore control. Closure would reopen dialogue. But silence offers none of that. It leaves the narcissist alone with the truth they cannot distort, that someone recognized their patterns, understood the manipulation, and still chose peace over engagement. The silent witness effect does not punish loudly. It erodes slowly. It strips away the narcissist's ability to deny who they were in that relationship. And that quiet knowing, carried by someone who walked away whole, becomes a presence the narcissist can never fully escape. Before the betrayal, the narcissist believed they held the emotional power. They decided when closeness happened, when distance was applied, when affection was given, and when it was withheld. They shaped reactions, triggered insecurity, and guided the emotional rhythm of the relationship. Control didn't always look aggressive. It often looked subtle, quiet, and strategic. The wrong person adapted, empathized, and stayed emotionally available, which only reinforced the narcissist's sense of dominance. As long as the wrong person was emotionally invested, the narcissist's influence remained intact. Betrayal changes that dynamic in a way the narcissist never anticipates. When the wrong person detaches emotionally, the familiar levers stop working. Guilt no longer pulls. Silence no longer provokes panic. Affection no longer resets the bond. Even anger loses its usefulness. The narcissist may attempt old tactics, charm, blame, pity, withdrawal, but they land on empty ground. The emotional responses they relied on simply don't appear. And in that absence, the narcissist realizes something irreversible has happened. What's lost is not the relationship, but the ability to steer it. Emotional detachment removes the narcissist's access point. Without emotional hooks, there is nothing to manipulate, nothing to destabilize, nothing to reclaim. The wrong person is no longer reacting from attachment, hope, or fear. They are responding, if at all, from clarity. That shift is permanent. Emotional independence cannot be undone once it is fully formed. This loss creates a deep sense of disorientation for the narcissist. They may feel ignored, unseen, or inexplicably powerless. They may escalate behavior, attempting to provoke a reaction just to confirm influence still exists. But the more they try, the more obvious the loss becomes. Influence requires engagement, and emotional detachment removes engagement entirely. Over time, this becomes one of the narcissist's greatest regrets. Not because they missed the connection, but because they missed the control. Betrayal sealed the moment when power shifted. The wrong person no longer carries the emotional weight of the relationship, and without that weight, the narcissist's tactics collapse. What remains is a permanent loss of influence that cannot be recovered, no matter how much time passes. You don't hear this part very often because it doesn't explode loudly, it unfolds slowly, in silence. When a narcissist betrays the wrong person, there is no instant karma, no dramatic collapse, no public apology. Instead, something far more permanent happens. The one person who truly saw them, steadied them, believed in them leaves without fighting back. And that quiet exit becomes the moment everything changes. From that day on, the narcissist keeps moving, smiling, pretending, but something inside never recovers. They replay conversations they can't undo. They search for replacements that never feel the same. And they carry a regret they will never admit, but will feel for the rest of their lives. This video isn't about revenge or validation. It's about understanding why some betrayals don't just hurt, they seal fate. Stay with me until the end, because the final insight explains why walking away in silence is the most powerful response of all. And if this speaks to something you've lived, not just watched, drop a single word in the comments. Sealed. Subscribe if you're ready for truth that actually frees you. They never understand it at first. When the betrayal happens, the narcissist assumes life will simply reset the way it always has. New people will appear. New admiration will arrive. New attention will fill the space. But this time something is different. The person they betrayed was not just another partner, friend, or emotional option. That person played a role the narcissist rarely recognizes but deeply depends on, a quiet emotional regulator. Without realizing it, the narcissist had been borrowing stability from them. Their calm absorbed chaos. Their empathy softened sharp edges. Their presence anchored moods that would otherwise spiral. When that person is gone, the narcissist doesn't feel instant pain. They feel confusion. Things that once felt effortless now feel unstable. Their emotions swing faster. Their irritations last longer. Their inner noise grows louder. They begin searching for replacements, convinced the solution is simply finding someone new. On the surface, they may succeed. There are conversations, flirtation, attention, and even admiration, but something feels off. The connection doesn't settle them. The laughter feels thin. The validation fades quickly. What they don't want to admit is that the wrong person didn't just provide affection, they provided regulation. They knew when to soothe and when to stay quiet. They knew how to ground the narcissist without challenging their fragile self-image. That kind of emotional attunement is rare, and once broken by betrayal, it does not return. Over time, the absence becomes undeniable. The narcissist notices they are more reactive than before. They feel restless even when surrounded by people. They feel bored more quickly, irritated more easily, and dissatisfied no matter how much attention they receive. They may blame others for being boring, needy, or not enough, but the truth is simpler and harder to face. No one stabilizes them the way that person did. No one absorbs their emotional weight without asking for accountability. No one holds space while disappearing themselves in the process. This is where regret quietly begins. Not loud, dramatic regret, but a low, persistent awareness that something vital was lost. The narcissist realizes they didn't just betray a person, they betrayed the one relationship that kept them functional. Every new connection becomes a comparison they never intended to make. Every moment of inner chaos reminds them of the calm they destroyed. They may never speak this truth aloud. They may never admit it even to themselves. But internally they know. The supply source they could never replace is gone, and with it, the sense of balance they once mistook for control. For a narcissist, connection is never truly about closeness or mutual understanding. It is about reflection. They look into others the way someone looks into a mirror, not to see the other person, but to see themselves reinforced, admired, and confirmed. The wrong person served as that mirror in a way no one else did. Through patience, loyalty, and emotional depth, they reflected back an image of strength, importance, and superiority that the narcissist depended on to feel real. As long as that reflection remained intact, the narcissist's identity felt solid. They knew who they were because someone else was constantly confirming it for them. When betrayal happens, that mirror shatters. The wrong person stops reflecting admiration, stops validating distortions, stops feeding the image the narcissist needs to survive. At first, the narcissist assumes this loss is temporary. They believe another mirror can easily replace the old one. But what they don't realize is that the reflection they lost wasn't generic, it was precise. It was shaped by deep familiarity, emotional attunement, and long-term investment. That kind of mirror cannot be recreated quickly, if at all. Without that reflection, the narcissist begins to feel something they rarely tolerate: emptiness. Their sense of self becomes unstable. Confidence fluctuates. Superiority feels forced rather than natural. They may compensate by seeking louder admiration, bigger reactions, or more dramatic validation, but none of it lands the same way. The reflection no longer feels believable. Compliments feel shallow. Attention feels temporary. Praise fades too quickly to hold them together. Over time, this creates internal fractures. The narcissist becomes more defensive, more reactive, more dependent on external input. They may obsess over how they are perceived, replay past moments when they felt powerful, or fixate on the person who no longer reflects them. What haunts them is not love lost, but identity lost. The wrong person didn't just walk away, they took the mirror with them. This is why betrayal becomes permanent. Once access to that reflection is gone, the narcissist is forced to confront a self they never learned to build from within. Without someone to reflect greatness back to them, their image begins to crack, distort, and collapse. And that quiet identity fracture is something no new supply can fully repair. For a narcissist, regret is rarely what it seems. To the outside world, it may look like remorse, guilt, or sorrow over a lost connection. They may apologize, act subdued, or even attempt to make amends, but beneath the surface, the emotion driving these behaviors is rarely genuine. What the narcissist truly experiences is the pain of losing control. Their sense of power, influence, and dominance is their lifeblood, and anything that threatens it produces intense distress. When they betray the wrong person, the anticipated sense of victory, superiority, and absolute control fails to materialize, leaving the narcissist in a state of frustration that masquerades as regret. The distinction is subtle but critical. Most people associate regret with self-reflection, acknowledgement of wrongdoing, and a desire to repair harm. For the narcissist, however, the concept of moral responsibility rarely exists in the same way. They do not see their betrayal as a moral failing. They see it as a strategic act, a maneuver intended to assert dominance, secure influence, or test the boundaries of attachment. When the strategy works with most people, the narcissist feels satisfied, validated, and reinforced. But when it fails, when the wrong person remains unaffected, indifferent, or empowered, the experience becomes something entirely different. It is not guilt. It is dissonance, the acute awareness that their expected outcome did not occur, that they miscalculated, and that the person they sought to control remains intact. This confusion between regret and the loss of control explains many behaviors that outsiders misinterpret as vulnerability or growth. The narcissist may reach out, send messages, or attempt to reconnect in subtle or overt ways. They may frame their words to suggest contrition, even empathy, but the underlying motive is always the same: to regain influence, to provoke a reaction, or to restore the illusion of power. They are not mourning the relationship or the betrayal itself. They are mourning the failure of their manipulation. The wrong person did not crumble, did not beg, did not submit, and in that refusal lies the narcissist's real loss. This misperception also drives repeated cycles of obsession and comparison. The narcissist cannot simply move on because their hierarchy has been disrupted. They watch from a distance, observe achievements, notice emotional stability, and measure independence. Every step the wrong person takes in rebuilding, thriving, or detaching becomes a reminder of the narcissist's lost dominance. The sense of control, which was once effortless, is now forever out of reach, and the narcissist interprets this as personal failure. In reality, the power they thought they had never belonged to them. It was lent to them by someone who chose to give attention, respect, and emotional energy. When that person withdraws or protects themselves, the narcissist experiences shock masked as regret. The intensity of this regret is magnified because the narcissist's identity is intertwined with control. Their self-worth, confidence, and perception of competence are largely dependent on the reactions of others. Without the ability to influence, manipulate, or dominate, the narcissist experiences an existential discomfort. They feel exposed and powerless, as if the framework of their identity has been weakened. They may replay the events obsessively, imagining what could have been done differently, recalculating strategies, and envisioning outcomes in which their dominance was restored. This mental looping is exhausting and continuous, but it provides no true reconciliation because the person they sought to control remains beyond reach. Furthermore, the narcissist often attributes their feelings to external factors. They may believe that the wrong person was lucky, manipulative, or unaware of their own vulnerability. By externalizing the cause of their frustration, they avoid confronting the truth. The real reason for their distress is that the person refused to be controlled. Any appearance of contrition or remorse is filtered through this lens. They may articulate regret in words, but the emotional resonance is rooted in irritation, envy, or humiliation rather than true empathy. Over time, this confusion deepens. The narcissist may attempt new relationships, recreate patterns of manipulation, or seek other targets for validation. Yet the memory of the wrong person persists as a benchmark, someone who could not be bent, broken, or subordinated. Every comparison reinforces the failure, amplifying the feeling that they have lost something they cannot reclaim. Unlike ordinary regret, which can lead to personal insight, this experience entrenches obsession, defensiveness, and recurring attempts to regain imagined control. In some cases, the narcissist may even engage in subtle attempts at sabotage or observation, hoping to provoke a reaction. They may believe that a demonstration of success, charm, or dominance can elicit a response. But the wrong person's emotional independence acts as a shield. Each unsuccessful attempt further solidifies the narcissist's realization that their control has been permanently lost. The psychological tension persists because the narcissist's self-perception relies on influence over others. When influence is denied, the sense of inadequacy grows. Ultimately, what appears as regret in a narcissist is rarely about the betrayal itself. It is the recognition that their power, once presumed absolute, has limits. The wrong person's resilience exposes those limits, and the narcissist experiences a unique kind of pain, the knowledge that they could not bend the world to their will. This is why they obsess, why they watch, and why they replay events over and over. They are not processing moral failure, they are grappling with the unthinkable realization that dominance, once assumed, can be lost, and that some people cannot be broken. This is the core of the narcissist's regret, not sorrow for the past, but mourning the loss of control they never truly owned. For a narcissist, life is a continuous performance, a delicate dance of charm, influence, and control that sustains a carefully constructed sense of self. Their emotional world is tightly managed, a place where feelings are instruments to be played rather than experiences to be fully lived. Relationships, admiration, and attention act as scaffolding, propping up the identity they have built over years, often on foundations as fragile as ego and denial. They measure themselves by how well they are seen, how effectively they dominate the narrative, and how deeply others depend on them. In this environment, betrayal is a dangerous tool, but betraying the wrong person is catastrophic. It does more than end a relationship. It imposes an invisible ceiling on emotional growth, sealing them into a state of psychological stagnation that lasts far longer than anyone observing from the outside might suspect. The concept of an emotional ceiling is subtle but profound. When a narcissist betrays someone who was emotionally attuned, loyal, and perceptive, they destroy a mirror that had allowed them to calibrate their feelings, reactions, and self-perception. This mirror was not just a reflection of admiration, it was a stabilizing mechanism that allowed the narcissist to navigate emotions without truly confronting them. When the wrong person departs, emotionally detached and intact, the narcissist loses the ability to self-regulate. No amount of charm, distraction, or external validation can replicate the grounding effect that the wrong person provided. The emotional scaffolding is gone, leaving them unanchored, reactive, and vulnerable in ways they are ill-equipped to handle. This loss has long-term consequences. Whereas the wrong person moves forward, healing, integrating, and evolving, the narcissist remains psychologically frozen at the point of betrayal. Their emotional development stalls because growth requires reflection, accountability, and self-awareness, all things the narcissist has historically avoided. The emotional maturity they could have developed through reflection and empathy is replaced by repetition of the same manipulative behaviors, obsessive comparisons, and attempts to regain control. They cannot evolve in the same way because their emotional world is built on maintaining dominance rather than understanding consequences. Every future relationship becomes an echo of the past, a rehearsal of old strategies rather than a space for authentic growth. The stagnation is amplified by the narcissist's reliance on external validation. They are accustomed to gauging self-worth through the reactions of others. When they betrayed the wrong person, they expected submission, chaos, or dependency to confirm their dominance. That confirmation never came. The lack of response creates a psychological void that cannot be filled. Without external cues, the narcissist struggles to measure their own value, leaving them emotionally static. Meanwhile, the wrong person's life continues to unfold naturally, free from manipulation and full of lessons, growth, and self-reliance. The contrast is stark. One individual evolves while the other is trapped in a frozen emotional timeline, forever anchored to the moment of their own failure. This ceiling affects not only internal growth, but also behavior in subsequent relationships. The narcissist attempts to replicate old patterns, seeking admiration, control, or emotional feedback from new partners. Yet the effectiveness of these patterns diminishes because they are no longer grounded in the subtle calibration once provided by the wrong person. Overcompensation, manipulation, and rushed intimacy become default strategies, revealing cracks in the facade faster than before. The narcissist may perceive rejection or indifference as temporary setbacks, but in reality, these responses reflect the same principle. Their emotional range has been artificially capped, limiting their ability to genuinely connect, empathize, or adapt. Time exacerbates the stagnation. The longer the narcissist remains within this self-imposed ceiling, the more their emotional world ossifies. Habits, defensive mechanisms, and compulsive behaviors solidify, creating rigid patterns that are difficult to break. Aging does not bring insight or acceptance, it brings heightened awareness of what was lost and what can never be reclaimed. The wrong person's continued growth becomes a living reminder of the narcissist's emotional immobility. Every display of independence, resilience, or achievement acts as a mirror, reflecting not just the loss of control but the loss of the opportunity to evolve. Unlike ordinary regret, which can motivate introspection, this form of stagnation traps them in a cycle of comparison, frustration, and obsession, deepening the ceiling that was sealed the moment the betrayal occurred. The ceiling also manifests in internal conflict. The narcissist experiences subtle but persistent discomfort, a sense that life is moving forward without them. They may envy the wrong person's stability, celebrate minor victories with hollow satisfaction, or engage in obsessive mental comparisons. These thoughts create cognitive strain because they confront the reality that they have reached a plateau they cannot surpass. Emotional resilience, patience, and authentic connection, all essential components of human growth, remain inaccessible because the narcissist's energy is consumed by maintaining facades and attempting to reclaim influence that no longer exists. The ceiling is reinforced every time the wrong person thrives emotionally, every time they act with maturity, and every time they demonstrate the autonomy the narcissist could never compel or replicate. Paradoxically, this stagnation is self-reinforcing. The narcissist cannot grow because their strategies and worldview are designed to avoid accountability and authentic emotional engagement. They cannot access the very tools, introspection, empathy, and honesty that would allow them to expand beyond the ceiling. Every failed relationship, every miscalibrated interaction, and every unsuccessful attempt to reclaim validation only cements the upper limit of their emotional range. Unlike the wrong person, who evolves organically, the narcissist remains trapped in a state of arrested development, forever anchored to the psychological moment of their own betrayal. The lifelong cost becomes increasingly evident over time. No matter how many new relationships, achievements, or experiences the narcissist accumulates, they are unable to move beyond the plateau imposed by their past actions. The emotional richness, adaptability, and maturity they forfeited cannot be reclaimed retroactively. They may appear successful externally, but internally, the inability to surpass the sealed ceiling manifests as emptiness, obsession, and a subtle but persistent dissatisfaction with life itself. The wrong person's healing, growth, and independence act as a constant contrast, reinforcing the stagnation and making the narcissist painfully aware of what was permanently lost. In the final analysis, betraying the wrong person does more than end a relationship. It locks the narcissist into a self-imposed emotional prison. Their ceiling is sealed not by external circumstances, but by their own choices, their own inability to evolve, and their reliance on control over connection. While the wrong person moves forward, integrating experiences, learning lessons, and embracing growth, the narcissist remains emotionally frozen at the age of betrayal. That is the true, lifelong regret, the realization that no amount of manipulation, charm, or control can expand the emotional range that was permanently capped the day they chose betrayal over connection. It is a stagnation that persists quietly, invisibly, and irreversibly, a cost far greater than the loss of any single relationship, and a haunting reminder that some acts create consequences that last far longer than the moment of choice itself. Narcissists survive by editing reality. They reshape memories, reframe events, and rewrite history in ways that protect their self-image. In their inner world, they are never truly at fault, only misunderstood, mistreated, or forced into circumstances beyond their control. This rewriting is not a conscious lie in the way most people understand it. It is a psychological survival strategy. Without it, their fragile identity would collapse under the weight of shame, guilt, and accountability. For most experiences, this strategy works. Conflicts are softened, betrayals are justified, and losses are reframed as victories. Time passes, and the original truth fades into something more comfortable. But betraying the wrong person creates an event that resists distortion. Something about that betrayal is too clear, too clean, too undeniable. The wrong person does not react in ways that allow the narcissist to rewrite the story. They do not explode in chaos that can be blamed. They do not beg in ways that can be reframed as weakness. They do not stay and slowly adapt to the rewritten version of events. They see the truth, and they leave. That clarity locks the memory in place. There is no alternate version to cling to, no softened narrative to escape into. The betrayal remains exactly what it was. At first, the narcissist tries anyway. They tell themselves the person was too sensitive, too demanding, too dramatic, or not worth the effort. They convince themselves walking away was inevitable, even necessary. But over time, cracks appear in that story. The emotional consequences don't align with the rewritten script. If the betrayal truly didn't matter, why does the memory keep returning? Why does it surface during moments of stillness, when distractions fade and the mind grows quiet? Why does it reappear not during triumph but during emptiness? This is how haunting begins, not as fear, but as persistence. The memory does not scream. It waits. It shows up late at night, during moments of boredom, or in the middle of unrelated conversations. It appears when the narcissist is alone with themselves, when there is no audience to perform for. Unlike other memories, this one does not blur with time. It stays sharp, emotionally intact, and strangely resistant to denial. The narcissist remembers not just what they did, but how clearly the wrong person saw it. Failure intensifies the haunting. When new relationships collapse, when admiration fades quickly, or when life does not deliver the validation they expect, the memory resurfaces with greater weight. The narcissist begins to compare unconsciously. They remember the stability they once had, the ease of being understood without effort, the sense of control that came from being mirrored so precisely. And alongside that memory comes the realization they cannot fully rewrite, they destroyed it themselves. Aging deepens this effect. As time passes, opportunities narrow. The narcissist may still attract people, but the quality changes. The reflections feel weaker, the admiration less convincing, the connections more fragile. With fewer distractions and less novelty, the mind turns inward more often. This is when unrevised memories become especially powerful. The betrayal of the wrong person stands out as a turning point, a moment when something irreplaceable was lost. Not because of fate or circumstance, but because of choice. What makes this haunting unbearable is that the narcissist cannot share it. Admitting the truth would mean admitting fault, and that threatens their identity. So the regret remains unspoken, unprocessed, and unresolved. It doesn't evolve into wisdom or growth. It stays frozen, repeating itself in the same emotional form. The narcissist may grow more defensive, more bitter, or more detached as a result, but the memory remains unchanged. This is also why they may suddenly reappear years later, reaching out without explanation. It's not love that drives this impulse. It's the desire to revise the memory, to rewrite the ending, to regain control over a story that escaped them. If they can provoke a response, anger, nostalgia, confusion, they can soften the truth. But when the wrong person remains distant, calm, or uninterested, the haunting intensifies. The memory stays sealed. In the end, what haunts the narcissist is not being abandoned, exposed, or punished. It is knowing there exists a version of themselves that cannot be edited out of history. A version seen clearly by someone who walked away whole. That memory becomes a quiet companion through silence, failure, and time. And because it cannot be rewritten, it becomes one of the few truths the narcissist is forced to carry for the rest of their life. For a narcissist, their mask is everything. It is the carefully crafted persona that allows them to move through life undetected, admired, and in control. Through charm, attention, and subtle manipulation, they present the world with exactly the version of themselves they want others to see. This mask is precise, almost surgical in its execution. It is honed over time, tested against relationships, and adjusted to maintain influence while hiding insecurity. With the wrong person, the mask worked flawlessly. That person's attention and emotional availability allowed the narcissist to operate comfortably behind the facade, controlling the narrative without fear of exposure. But once betrayal occurs, the dynamics change in ways that the narcissist cannot repair. After betraying the wrong person, the narcissist enters future relationships with a new kind of instability. The mask, once precise, begins to fail. They may not notice it at first, but the misalignment is there. It shows up in subtle ways: a compliment that feels hollow, a charm offensive that lands awkwardly, a vulnerability performed too quickly. The precision that allowed them to read people and adjust their presentation no longer works. They have lost the calibration that came from interacting with someone who reflected their ego accurately while remaining emotionally grounded. Now each new person becomes a test rather than a mirror, and the narcissist struggles to adjust. In an attempt to regain control, they overcompensate. They become more charming than necessary, more attentive than natural, and more intense in their pursuit. They rush intimacy, attempting to secure attachment before their flaws or inconsistencies can be noticed. What once took months of careful observation and adjustment now happens in days, sometimes hours. This desperation is invisible to them in the moment, but glaringly obvious to anyone paying attention. Their overcompensation signals need, insecurity, and imbalance, the exact vulnerabilities the mask was designed to hide. Repetition of familiar patterns accelerates. The narcissist falls back on tactics that once worked with the wrong person, assuming the same behaviors will yield similar results. They flirt, manipulate, gaslight, and withdraw in ways that have previously ensured control. But the difference now is that the emotional calibration is off, the intensity is skewed, the timing is wrong. Responses from new partners do not align with expectations. The behaviors that once built smooth relationships now reveal inconsistencies, gaps, and contradictions. Instead of subtle influence, their strategies now stand out as manipulative or forced. This failure of the mask leads to rapid exposure. New relationships burn faster than the narcissist anticipates. What should have been a slow, gradual unveiling of self now occurs almost immediately. Partners notice contradictions, experience emotional volatility, and feel manipulated. Suspicion arises where trust might have been built. The narcissist's ability to charm and deceive diminishes, and the very mask that once created security becomes a source of instability. Every misstep compounds the perception of inauthenticity, leading to disappointment and disengagement from the other person. The failure also affects the narcissist internally. They sense the loss of control, even if they cannot articulate it. Their confidence dips, their sense of superiority wavers, and they feel exposed in ways they rarely have before. Because the mask is a core tool of survival, its malfunction produces anxiety and restlessness. They may attempt to rebuild it through frantic charm, overcompensation, or attempts to manipulate reality, but the process is no longer smooth or automatic. The skill that once came effortlessly now requires effort, and even then it is imperfect. Another consequence is impatience. Having lost the precision of their mask, narcissists often become frustrated with the slow pace of authentic connection. They rush relationships, escalate attachment, and attempt to secure influence before it can stabilize. This impatience frequently triggers patterns of burnout in the other person, causing withdrawal or conflict, which reinforces the narcissist's perception of being misunderstood or unappreciated. What they interpret as rejection is often a natural response to their misaligned tactics. In addition, the mask failure causes narcissists to project blame outward. They convince themselves that new partners are too sensitive, too demanding, or not enough. This projection is a defense mechanism, shielding the narcissist from confronting the deeper truth. Their own behavioral miscalibration, insecurity, and loss of control are the real reasons for repeated failure. Meanwhile, they continue cycling through relationships, seeking validation that no longer comes easily or reliably. Ultimately, betraying the wrong person introduces a kind of permanent instability in future connections. The mask is no longer precise because the calibration that depended on someone who reflected and absorbed their energy is gone. Overcompensation, rushed intimacy, and repeated patterns become default survival strategies, but they only accelerate exposure. Each failed attempt reinforces the pattern, creating a cycle of short-lived relationships, disappointment, and frustration. The narcissist may never realize that their own sabotage began with a betrayal they cannot undo, a loss they cannot repair, and a mask they can no longer wear flawlessly. In this way, the consequences of betraying the wrong person ripple far beyond the immediate moment, shaping every future attempt at connection, influence, and control.